Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Beth Chats Books. Now today is only going to be a brief video kind of catch up because I haven't been reading very much recently. So first off, I just wanted to say I'm sending all my thoughts out to everybody who is dealing with the new measures that Boris has put in place due to COVID-19 here in the UK. I know loads of people are self-isolating at the moment or they're working from home. Now I am classed as a key worker. I work for the NHS. I'm a receptionist at a GP centre. So I am still working at the moment. So while I would love to be reading loads of books and self-isolating because the nerdy part of me loves the idea of having all day every day to read, I'm not doing that at the moment, so this is my day off. I did just want to send a message that I'm thinking of anybody that's been affected directly by COVID-19, and if you've got family members who've tested positive or you're self-isolating because you have friends and family who are in the vulnerable category due to ongoing conditions, then I'm sending my love and I'm thinking of you, and not just here in the UK but all over the world. I have lots of BookTube friends who are living in America at the moment, and that's also very scary over there. New York and other places of America are being really badly affected. Also countries like Spain, Italy, France, Germany and many other European countries and India. We're all watching the news. We know everybody and everyone is seeming to be affected by the condition and the spread of this disease. So I just wanted to say I'm thinking of you all, and I hope that this time blows by very quickly and hopefully it's not too awful on our community going forward. I don't really know what to say. We don't know how long it's going to last for, and obviously it's affecting so many families across the world and it's terrifying, and I don't want to dwell on that negativity. I just wanted to send positive thoughts. I'm thinking of everybody, and what's beautiful about the BookTube community is we're all connected via our love of books, and I just wanted to send some solidarity from one booktuber to all of you out there. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that anymore. So I'm just going to go through the few books I've managed to read while everything's been going on, because obviously work has been quite mad at the moment as well. So I haven't had that much chill time. So when we last spoke, I was reading Carmen Maria Machado's Her Body and Other Parties. Now, a lot of people keep saying the last bit of her name, Machado, differently. So I don't know how that's actually pronounced, but hopefully nobody will tell me off for how I've pronounced that. I gave it a bash. So I ended up rereading a few stories in here in the short story collection, and upon a reread I connected with them better. So the first one, The Husband Stitch, ended up being one of my favourite stories. It was quite interesting. I did a bit of research into The Husband Stitch and I did not know, but apparently the husband stitch is when people have a baby, when women have a baby, and when they have to have stitching done after the baby down below. Apparently there is this very strange notion that the doctors can add an extra stitch, which is classed as the husband stitch because it's meant to almost make everything tighter down there after having the baby. Now apparently in America and other countries it's had really bad effect on women's health. It's caused infection, it's caused excess pain. Women have experienced pain every time they've had sex afterwards and didn't know that they even had a husband stitch done during their post-childbirth recovery. So people aren't getting consent for it. It's all very controversial to say the least. So that was a bit of reading that I didn't know about. And then there are some quite strange stories in here. I didn't love it as much as Salt Slow, which is the last kind of story collection I read by Julia Armfield. It didn't have as much of a wow factor, purely because one of the main stories in here is about law and order, and it goes on for a lot of pages, and I ended up skipping that because I've never watched Law and Order and it just wasn't relevant to me. Inventory, another story in here, was really interesting because, without being too negative, it dwells on how through one person's sexual liaisons and sexual partners they spread this viral disease, which is obviously very apt at the moment. So there is a lot of discussion about disease here and infection and the transference of disease and infection. And that one, it's one woman and every partner, male and female, that she has sexual relationships with as this disease is spreading throughout the US in this particular story. So It was very poignant, very apt, very relevant, and I would compel a lot of people to read this. But there was just that main bulky story in the middle that I didn't get on with, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars overall, and I just really enjoyed it. And then the next one that I read was Fleischman is in Trouble by Taffy Brodesser Akner. Now, I can't talk too much about this one because this is on the list of books that I have to judge for category D in fiction for the BookTube prize. So it was quite chunky. It's about Fleischman, who's a doctor, and he is in the process of having a divorce from his wife, and he has 2 children, and near the beginning, it's a good few pages really before we get confirmation of this development of the story, but his ex-wife, soon to be divorced wife, but currently still is his wife, goes missing, and we learn about their relationship. So we learn about their relationship predominantly through Fleischman, but also there is a second narrator, which is Fleischman's best friend, who's a girl, and she's kind of like an omnipresent narrator over what's happening in Fleischman's life, which adds a weird dynamic. But I can't talk too much more other than that about this story, and obviously once the category's done and I'm allowed to do reviews, I will talk about this in a bit more detail because I have a lot of thoughts on this one as well. So there's that one. And then the next one I read was Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. Now, I should have been reading the next book next, because again, the next book that I'm going to talk about was on my BookTuber prize fiction judging list. However, I tried to dip in and out of it and I couldn't, so I thought I would have a palate cleansing reader, which a lot of people have said Queenie was. So I squeezed this in between my judging books. So this one is set in the UK, and it's about Queenie, who's a black British woman living in London, and it's about, she gets a job at a newspaper as kind of an intern, and her relationship to her boyfriend, her white boyfriend Tom, at the beginning of the novel disintegrates, and they go on a break, like a Ross and Rachel style break, and from there her life kind of spirals a bit out of control. She's had issues with both of her parents growing up. She's predominantly been raised by her grandmother, her grandfather and her auntie, and she's had a difficult time with her self-esteem and her identity, and then when Tom initiates this break, it kind of spirals into a little bit of, some would say, sexual exploration, but she kind of starts liaising with people on apps, and this goes quite badly. She starts semi-romance at work, which also goes terribly badly. She falls out with her friends a bit. She has a bit of mental health issues in this book that then, it does all have a happy ending. So it's not a depressive book. And a lot of people have said the humour is what ploughs this book forward. So there's a group chat between her and her friends, and it has messaging style text messages throughout it, which breaks up the book a bit and does provide some light humour. It does teach us a lot about what it means to be a black British woman in contemporary UK today, in the temporary age. But there was only one main niggle that I had with this, and that is that in this book Queenie comes across as very irresponsible about her own sexual health. So she starts visiting the clinics and she has sexual relationships with men that are difficult to read, and she doesn't take care of her own sexual health. So she keeps going to the clinic and telling the members of staff there when she gets screened that she has had unprotected sex. And although she has got a form of contraception, she's on the coil that protects her from pregnancy, she has not thought about the risks of STIs, which I found really uncomfortable, because this book is very much, although it's an adult fiction, it's on the cusp. A lot of teenage women, a lot of black girls who are growing up into that teenagehood, early 20s, will really gravitate towards this book because she is a fantastic character and she might create a voice for a lot of people who don't find it in other contemporary books in the UK at the moment. She represents what it means to be black and British and beautiful, but she also then has responsibility to educate the group of people that are going to read this book and her fans, and as such her book fans, you know, the people who fall in love with Queenie. And that made me uncomfortable because promoting unsafe sex when there are going to be so many teenagers who are going to love this book, to me, is a negligent thing for an author to do. Now, I know we talk very much in the media about it's not celebrities or authors' jobs to be responsible for other people's children's and other people's choices, but I really think this would have been a fantastic way to educate people that unsafe sex is really dangerous. And the fact that she goes 3 times to the clinic and she's had multiple times of having unprotected sex made me very uncomfortable, because I just didn't think that sent a very good message, and overall it kind of dimmed the book for me a little bit. Well, I love that it explored mental health and I really enjoyed the book overall, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but it was just a little bit of a niggle on my end about that one. And then the book I'm currently reading, I'm only about 186 pages, so I'm hoping to get a big dent done of this because I think it's around 400 pages, is The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So again, I have to read this for my group category of the BookTube prize. I don't know if I'll finish it in time, so I already submitted my form because I already had a rough idea halfway through reading this where it would place. This is a book about the Underground Railroad in America. It's about black identity, so it's got the character Hiram, who started off working in the fields. He was basically a slave who worked in the slave trade, and his father is kind of his slave owner. He's a slave owner and he owns him. And obviously his mother gets moved and he stays in the plantation working the fields, and then he gets upgraded to the house, and then from there he goes on a journey with the Underground Railroad. I don't want to talk too much about it, and especially because I'm less than halfway through, so I don't know how it's all going to pan out, but this is obviously very intense subject matter. It's very reminiscent of other books that are coming out at the moment or have come out. Like, it reminds me a lot of Colson Whitehead's storytelling. I've only read The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, but there's a lot of similarities between that, and I have watched a lot of podcasts and videos and YouTube videos on The Nickel Boys, which is another book I want to read by Colson Whitehead, and it seems to have very similar themes raised in it. So it is very intense in subject matter, and it is quite a long book, so I am slowly getting my way through this. But obviously, like I've mentioned with all the other books that I'm judging, once I can talk about them in a bit more detail, I will do. So there's that one. And then I'm hoping to try and finish that by the end of this weekend so that I can start with some of my library books. So I still have a lot of library books out. I have renewed them, but I think due to everything that's going on at the moment, that they won't necessarily fine people or ask people to return books at the moment. People probably are not able to request. I haven't personally requested any books, so I don't know how that works, but I'm presuming they've suspended all library services because obviously the libraries have closed at the moment. So I renewed them just in case, so that I can have them for the foreseeable future. And I think renewing them, they're not due till mid-April, but obviously I think the libraries will then get in contact with us or allow us to renew them going forward, because if they're shut for an indefinite period of time, obviously you can't fine people for not being able to return books. So I've got The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson still to read. Now this is quite short, so I'm hoping to read this one next because everybody says Maggie Nelson's amazing. I was listening to a podcast again by the fabulous Bethany Rutter and Alice Slater about Maggie Nelson. Was mentioned again in that particular podcast, What Page Are You On podcast, which I love listening to, and they mentioned her again, so she's still on my radar. I've got Middle England by Jonathan Coe still to read. This one is on my radar at the moment because this one, as well as Bridge of Clay by Marcus Zuzak, The Dark Circle by Linda Grant, and Lost Children Archive by Valeria Nucelli are all the ones that I've renewed about 3 or 4 times, so I really need to get to them before I get to my 10 maximum renewals and have to return them. I also have The Starless Sea by Eric Morgenstern. I also have Hagseed by Margaret Atwood, Fire Sermon by Jamie Quattro, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, which I bought when I was in Budapest, which seems like a long time ago now, where I had a bit more freedom than we all have at the moment. And I've got a few other books that I could definitely read. I really want to read classics at the moment as well, because a lot of people are reading cosy classics while they're self-isolating, and a bit of romance instead of a bit of intensity is kind of where my mood's at, but I obviously have a loyalty to the library books. So that's everything that I wanted to talk about today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new video. Bye now.